What screams America more than a quilt? I don't know. Happy 4th of July, everyone. Cue the fireworks. Boom, 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 boom. We're making a super easy, beginner-friendly, scrappy-friendly, yardage-friendly, fat quarter-friendly quilt today. I wrote my first quilt pattern. It is called Gracefully Patriotic. It is free for everybody who wants it. It's literally down in the description below. There are 2 variations of it. One where you have a flag block that has stars, that is a 16 patch. This is a perfect quilt for a beginner. And the second variation of this block has the star part as an actual star block made of half square triangles. So if you are a beginner who has yet to learn how to make half square triangles, this is the perfect quilt pattern for you. And I'm going to walk you through today how to make specifically this flag block. The first thing we're going to do is make half square triangles 8 at a time. And I'm going to say the measurements, but don't you worry, you don't need to write them down because all of the measurements are in the pattern and the pattern is literally free. We're going to start with our blue and white fabric, and I am doing a scrappy version because I am a sucker for a scrappy quilt. I think the more fabrics in a quilt, the better. So I'm going to take 2 blue 6.5-inch blocks and 2 white 6.5-inch blocks, and I'm going to show you how to make half square triangles 8 at a time. First thing we're going to do is we're going to mark X's onto our 6.5-inch square, and I'm using a friction pen. You can use a hair marking tool, you can use any fabric marking tool you have, chalk. I even use a pencil sometimes, but that's what we're going to do first. So I'm just going to go diagonally. We're going to draw an X right down the middle. Boom, boom. And I'm going to do that with all of my blue squares. And because I'm just making 1 block, I'm only using 2 squares. Now I'm taking my white fabric and making sure the right side's up, and then pairing it with a blue square, right sides together. And if this is your first time making half square triangles 8 at a time, I recommend pinning your fabric just to make sure that everything is in place. The more you quilt, you're going to get better at manipulating your fabric, and you maybe won't need pins in the future, but if you are a beginner, I highly recommend using pins. Now we're going to take it over to our machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch down both sides of the lines we drew. Here's my little trick for sewing on either side of that line that you drew. Do you see that 1/4 inch line right here on the plate of my machine? I'm going to line my corner up with that line. And when I put my foot down, do you notice how my foot is not exactly a 1/4 inch? It is a little more than a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make sure that line is just a little bit in. Then I can start sewing. Once I get to a pin, I'm going to remove it. And my other little trick is, do you see these lines on the bottom of my little rebel? This guy is the middle line that lines up with the needle, and this guy is a 1/4 inch to the right, so I can line up my point of my fabric and then just follow along there. So you can see my point, I'm following along that line. I'm going all the way, and it's a perfect 1/4 inch. Now I'm just going to flip this guy around. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. After you've done one side, you're going to do it to the other side. When you sew diagonal lines on a piece of fabric, you are sewing on the bias. And I want to show you something. When I go like this, do you see how my fabric's not stretching? It's because I'm pulling with the way the fabric is woven. If I pull diagonally, do you see how much the fabric stretches? That is called your bias. When you're sewing a half square triangle, you are sewing directly on that bias, so there is going to be a little bit of stretch. And if you look at this piece that we just sewed, when I put it down, it's not gonna lie flat because the fabric has stretched a little bit on that bias. One way I like to help this guy out, I just like to press it with some steam. Always use steam when you press. And then now we're good. It's lying flat again. Now we're going to turn this into 8 half square triangles by cutting it. First, we're going to cut it perpendicular right in the middle, and then we're going to cut through our diagonal. So I'm going to measure 3¼ inches from the side, and I know that's my middle. I'm going to go down the middle. Boop. I'm going to do it again this way. 3¼ After we cut our perpendicular lines, we're going to cut right down the middle of our X. Boom. Then we're going to cut the other way. And now we have 8 perfect half square triangles that we need to trim down, because when you sew on the bias, things stretch a little bit. With half square triangles, you need to trim them after. Now we're going to press them all, and we're going to press them to the dark side. So we're going to press them towards the blue. When you press a half square triangle, you want to make sure that you're actually pressing and not pulling it, because these guys are the biases, so they are going to stretch a little bit more. I like to line up the edge of my iron with that seam line first and then kind of push it over. And I want to make sure to use steam, and ta-da! We got a half square triangle. Now that our half square triangles are all pressed, I'm going to turn them down into 2.5-inch blocks. If you look at my half square triangle, it is not even close to a perfect square. Look at that. That is why we have to trim it down, because when we sewed on the bias, there was a little bit of stretch. On your ruler, there is a 45-degree line. That line, we are going to line up with our center line from our triangles. I'm going to trim on one side, boop, trim on the other side, boop. Then we're going to flip this guy over, and now I can line that diagonal line up in the middle, as well as line up the edge on my 2.5-inch mark and trim it down again. And now you see we have a perfect 2.5-inch square. We're going to do that with all of our half square triangles. Trimming half square triangles really just takes a lot of practice. You trim down one side to get a straight edge, and then when you flip it around to the other side, that's really when you want to get your perfect size square. So I'm lining it up on my 2.5-inch mark and trimming the rest down to get that perfect square. If you're making this entire quilt, you're going to need 144 total half square triangles, but if you're making one block, you just need 12. We have all of our half square triangles, and now we're going to put them into our star block. Oh my goodness! I feel like every time we finish something, we need the fireworks. Boom, boom, boom! We finished our half square triangles! And now we're going to turn them into our star block. For our star block, you need 4 2.5-inch squares and 12 2.5-inch half square triangles. So I'm creating my star blocks by putting a 2.5-inch square in each of the corners. Look how cute this is. Now I'm going to sew my star block together, and I'm going to show you how I like to chain piece it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my second row on top of my first row, and I'm going to stack it all together. I want to make sure that I remember that this side is the side I'm going to sew, so I like to hold that side. I'm going to take it to my machine. Here's when I line up everything perfectly, and I'm going to sew using my 1/4-inch seam allowance. And I'm just grabbing from the pile and sewing the next block. Notice how I am not cutting my thread at all. I am keeping it together. That is what's creating that chain. Now I'm going to grab my next row, and I'm just going to lay all of these on top of each other. I'm stacking them in the order that I need them. I'm going to take them to my machine. When I open this first guy up, now I can just take this guy and lay it right on top and sew it together. Now I'm grabbing the next row, stacking them on top of each other again, bringing it back. Look how fun this little chain star is. It's so cute. Now I'm going to press it, and I'm going to show you my tricks to pressing it. I trimmed the threads in between. You don't have to, but I like to for this part. And now I'm going to iron my seams every other way. So this bottom one, I'm going to press it this way. This next one, this way, boom, boom, and so forth. I like to go from this way, and I like to run my iron against the seam first and then press it down. Run my iron against the seam, press it down until everything is flat. These seams went this way, so these guys need to go this way. I'm going to run my iron, press everything over. Run my iron along the edge of that seam, press it over. Perfect. Now we're going to sew our rows together, and we're going to do that by nesting our seams. I'm going to take my top block, I'm going to fold it over on the other one. Because we press the seams in opposite directions, I can go ahead, I can line them up right next to each other. So do you see how there's a bump on this side and then the bump on that side? You can line up the centers, and they kind of lock into each other. Same for these seams, they lock into each other, and that helps you get more perfect points. If you are a beginner quilter, I would recommend pinning it. So locking it and throwing a pin in it, and do that for all of your seams. Lock those seams, throw a pin in it. Everything's locked and loaded, and now I'm going to sew it together. I'm gonna sew the rest of these on and they'll be finished in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we got a finished block and now we just have to press it. Where all these points are coming together, that is gonna be super duper thick. So for these seams, I'm gonna press them open to try to reduce that bulk right there. Remember to use lots of steam, pressing those guys open. Another way to get flatter seams is to use a pressing block. You can buy them online, but for cheaper, you can go to a hardware store, grab a giant slab of wood and put a handle on it, and you got a great pressing block, and it flattens all your seams. We finished our first block. Boom, 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 boom. This is so cute. If you're making the full quilt, you're gonna want 12 of these, and now all we have to do is the stripes, and that's the easiest part. To make the first set of stripes, we're gonna make the smaller stripe section first. You're gonna need 2 red and 2 white 10.5 by 2.5 inch blocks, and we're just gonna sew them together. And if you are a beginner, I would recommend pinning it. I like one at the top, one at the bottom, and sometimes even one in the middle. I'm gonna sew all these together using my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and are you ready? 3, 2, 1, boom! Oh my gosh, it's done. Look at that, that was like magic. When I press these seams, I like to press them towards my red block, or you can press them open, whatever your preference is. We're at our final block, and oh my goodness, I just want this to be done. We just need 2 red and 1 white 8.5 by 2.5 inch strips, and we're gonna sew them together the same way. And remember, if you are a beginner, 100% go ahead and pin this one, especially because it's a little bit longer. And this one, I'm gonna add 4 pins. I'm gonna sew these 3 together, and they're gonna be done. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, boom! Oh my gosh, it's done. Look at that. If you are hating all of these fireworks and sound effects, sorry, not sorry. This is a 4th of July video, and there's gotta be fireworks. Except, fun fact about me, I absolutely hate fireworks. The sound of fireworks, it like makes me jump, and I don't like it. But now we're gonna sew the rest of this together, and then we got our America quilt. Here's how we're laying it out. I'm gonna sew my blue piece to my smaller red and white stripe piece, and I like to line up the seams and just pin them where they're at. And we're gonna sew everything together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna press this guy towards the striped side. We're gonna sew the last piece on, and 3, 2, 1, boom! Our block is done. How easy was that? We are finished with the quilt block for variation 2 of this quilt. Here is variation 1 of this quilt. What I love about quilt patterns is they really are just a guide or a template, and you can do whatever the heck you want with them. And that is why for this one I made sure it was fat quarter friendly, it was yardage friendly, it was scrappy friendly, and giving you different ideas of what you would want to do. Feel free to play with the layout any way you want. For this specific layout, I wanted variation 2 blocks. For this one, I did variation 1 blocks. And for this one, I did a mixture of both. How fun is that? And I know you want to see the final quilt, so boom! Oh my goodness, look how pretty it is. I am obsessed. It's just so pretty. I want to make another one. When I was writing this quilt pattern, I specifically wrote it with my sister in mind. I have made quilts for almost all of my siblings, and she wants an Americana quilt, so this quilt pattern is really dedicated to her. I know all y'all want to make this pattern, so click the link down below. It is free. Thanks for hanging out with me. I had a blast putting this guy together. Oh, and I forgot to ask y'all, what are you guys doing for 4th of July? Put it down in the comments below. Hopefully you learned something new and had a great time. If you did, please press that like button. It really, really helps boost this video in the algorithm. And if you want more fun quilting content, make sure to subscribe to us. I hope you have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.